Good evening, and as well, good early afternoon. So my name is Aurélien Lorange. On the side of the Corax Foundation, I will be having the pleasure today to host this match between two teams. One team is in the Netherlands and one team is in Canada. So we are in the Group B for the Hague Inter-University Law Debate Tournament, 8th edition, and today we'll be having a topic connected to finance and as well environmental impact. So before we start, of course, talking about the match, we introduce the teams. I will let them speaking simply to introduce themselves. So I will give the floor first to the University of Manitoba. We have currently Tarun Sandhu. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Taryn. I'm a first-year law student at the University of Manitoba, and I'm really excited to be here and participate in this inter-university debate tournament. International law is something that interests me because it's the path forward to the future to address the biggest problems we face as countries and as citizens of this, and stewards of the earth, really. And yeah, this is what drove me to participate in this, as well as its amazing opportunity to speak to law students around the world and to develop my advocacy skills and my speaking skills.
Thank you. Welcome. We have as well in The Hague Miss Bianca Michaela Kojukaru. Welcome.
Hello, thank you. My name is Bianca. I'm a third-year student of International and European Law at the Hague University of Applied Sciences. And the reason why I joined the debate tournament is because debate and Model UN were my gateway towards international law. So being able to do these activities and being able to argue with the arsenal of the legal knowledge that I've gained in the past 3 years is really satisfying and gratifying to me.
Thank you and welcome. We have as well in Winnipeg Mr. Cole Cornish. Welcome.
Wonderful to be here. Hi, everyone. I'm Cole, also from the University of Manitoba. One thing I'm particularly passionate about is debate. I think that the skills that one develops in debate are applicable virtually everywhere in the practice of law, specifically in advocacy, in working in the courtroom. So I think it's an awesome way to meet people with similar interests and to really practice and hone those skills. I'm also like my colleague Taryn, I'm in my first year.
Thank you, welcome. Welcome my colleague, and as well I will give the floor to Mr. Andrei Vlad Alexinski, in The Hague. Welcome.
Thank you. I am Andrei. I am a third year in International and European Law, and I am currently minoring in Artificial Intelligence and Technology, Compliance, as well as Contract Management and Procurement. I am very passionate about debate, and as Bianca said, this for me has also been a very good gateway into law as a study, and I am very excited to be here.
Thank you very much. And we have as well in Canada, Miss Nav Naing. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Nav, and I am a second-year student at the University of Manitoba, Faculty of Law, and I'm excited to be here today. Super interested in international law and debates around that topic, so I'm very excited for today's debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we send greetings as well to, of course, the coach as well, you might have. So on the side of TUAS, we send greetings to Syed Al-Tamash Khalil, who is the coach for TUAS team. And we send as well to all the students and as well the Faculty of Law in the University of Manitoba, Robson, I think, Robson Building, who is as well supporting you for this competition. As I mentioned just before the match, it will be the third team on the side of the University of Manitoba and the 8th team on the side of the University of Applied Science. So for this match, I will pass the floor maybe to my colleague as well to introduce herself before we do the allocation of positions.
Of course, a good day to our participants, and of course, good day, Professor Lorange. Of course, as well, I would like to pass my greetings to the three judges that will be reviewing this match. My name is Anna-Maria Urbanova, as always, together with my colleague, we ensure the co-hosting, and for your debate matches. So I did miss the introductions, apologies. But without further ado, I will be your host for today's debate. Just a short review of your debate statement that you received to prepare for this match is whether or not banks should be legally required to assess the environmental impact of their investment portfolios. We will hear the debate. We'll hear the debate on the two sides of this argument. And in a short while, you should see the wheel to allocate your debate positions during the match. As always, once the positions are allocated, you will have 5 minutes to finalize your preparation.
So we share my screen, so you will see the wheel with the double flags of your institutions and the country where your institutions is located. So as you can see, for the University of Manitoba and the University of Applied Science, there are two chances. One chance to be in favor, one chance to be against the motion. The team will be in favor, will be starting the match. So activate the randomizer. So for this match, the University of Applied Science will be against the motion. As a consequence, it means the University of Manitoba will be in favor and will be starting the first introduction. So concretely, it means that the University of Manitoba will defend the position that banks should be legally required to assess the environmental impact of their investment portfolios, while the University of Applied Science will defend the position that banks should not be legally required to assess the environmental impact of their investment portfolios. So now you will have 5 minutes to review your notes, and after the 5 minutes we'll be listening to the introduction. So yes, you may close your camera and microphone while you are reviewing your notes. Here we are done.
All right.
Yes,
Well, thank you very much for your final preparation. Just a short administrative note. I will be your host for today's session, but my colleague will be, his video stream will be giving you the visual cues as to bring your cards to your time. So when you see a yellow card, it indicates 30 seconds left. And when you see red card, it indicates your time is up. You can, of course, conclude your sentences comfortably, but please don't start a new one. And thus, without further ado, we'll start by hearing the opening statements, starting for the position in favor. University of Manitoba debate team, you now have 4 minutes.
I will begin my submission in 3, 2, 1. Good day to the panel of judges and to my colleagues from The Hague. My name is Taryn, and myself and my team from the University of Manitoba will be arguing for the motion. Banks should be legally required to assess the environmental impact of their investment portfolios. We would first like to say that in our view, legally required is in the context of domestic legislation instituted in all countries at the national level. Second, that our definition of environmental impact assessment is the same that the UN uses, a process to identify and evaluate the potential impacts of an activity to inform decision-making. With this, we would like to raise 3 reasons why the motion should be supported. First, it will enhance international efforts to fight climate change. Second, it will foster transparency and accountability. Third, it will provide critical capital for the development of a sustainable future. It is first important to note that the UN has already developed principles for responsible banking. This includes environmental assessments. Over 345 banks have signed on, and combined they control 54% of global banking assets. The signatories share annual reports which provide environmental assessments. These principles were developed to help meet the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. However, signing up is voluntary, and while many banks from around the world have signed on, it is notable that regions like Europe, where climate reporting regulations are more common, such as the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, those regions are overrepresented. Comparing that to a country like India, where banking regulations do not specifically require environmental assessments, only one bank in the whole country has signed on. 54% of banking assets is simply not enough. Environmental assessments need to be legally required. The UN principles show that environmental assessments can be measured, standardized, and effective anywhere on the globe. This leads me to my next point. Requiring banks to complete environmental assessments will foster transparency and accountability. The UN has recognized the importance of this in its Rio Declaration on Environment and Development. Principle 10 states shall facilitate, encourage public awareness and participation by making information widely available. Transparency and accountability are important not only to the public at large, but also to key stakeholders. Banks must answer to their domestic governments, their shareholders, and to their clients. Transparency to these groups can lead to accountability in the form of legislation, shareholder action, and loss of clientele. And this accountability isn't just in the context of helping the earth. Legislators have a legitimate interest in meeting their international obligations, like the Paris Agreement. Shareholders have a legitimate interest in ensuring that their banks are not engaged in climate-related financial risks, and clients of banks have interest in showing the environmental impacts of the banks, especially as it relates to them complying with their own regulations and their reputation. The greater transparency and accountability to all these stakeholders is critical. Finally, requiring environmental assessments also facilitates investment in sustainable business practices. This provides critical funding for greener technology, cleaner energy, and sustainable growth. Programs to incentivize financial institutions to invest in the environment exist around the world in the form of green bonds. These can be useful tools for nations and international organizations. By requiring banks to assess their environmental impact, green bonds and similar investments will become an attractive option to keep stakeholders happy while protecting our home. According to the UNFCCC, the current levels of global climate finance falls well below the levels needed to limit global warming. This motion is not merely a nice addition, but a necessary progress. In conclusion, the motion should pass because there is a pre-existing international framework, stakeholders with legitimate interests, and necessary climate action is required. It is time to force transparency and allow stakeholders the ability to make informed decisions about their financial institutions. Thank you for listening and your time.
Thank you for your submission. We'll now hear the opening statement for the against position. The Hague University of Applied Sciences, you now have 4 minutes.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, then I will start in 3, 2, 1. The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. Robert Swan. Good afternoon. My name is Andrei Aleksinski, and alongside my colleague Bianca Kornokarov, we will be arguing against the motion that banks should be legally required to assess the environmental impact of their investment portfolios. We will substantiate this position with three main points. Compliance would be superficial. The motion proposes regulatory overreach, and the data to be used is unreliable. Moving into our first argument. This is superficial compliance. It's a law that changes nothing. We've seen it happen before. Governments pass sweeping regulations and companies check the boxes instead of making real change. That is exactly what will happen here. Right now, banks don't have the expertise or the infrastructure to conduct meaningful environmental impact assessments. What will they do? They will outsource the job to third-party agencies. They use inconsistent and unreliable methods. The European Banking Authority has already raised concerns that ESG disclosures today lack standardization. That makes it impossible to actually compare financial institutions' real impact. This means that banks will end up producing hundreds of pages of legally required reports that don't actually reduce environmental harm. Meanwhile, smaller banks that lack massive compliance departments of the industry giants will struggle under the regulatory burden, leading to market consolidation and less competition. We don't need more red tape, we need smarter solutions. Secondly, this will be a regulatory overreach. It would force banks to pick politics over profit. The role of banks is to finance economic growth, not to act as environmental watchdogs. If we force them to limit funding based on rigid sustainability criteria, we distort the financial market and create unintended consequences. Take the mining industry, for example. On paper, it's environmentally harmful. But what about lithium and cobalt mining, the very materials that we need for renewable energy and electric cars? If banks avoid the sectors because of strict environmental impact rules, they end up slowing down the exact transition of clean energy that we want rather than accelerating it. We've already seen this kind of problem. In 2021, the EU's green taxonomy, a framework for classifying sustainable investments, initially excluded nuclear power and natural gas despite their role in reducing carbon emissions compared to coal. The result? Investor uncertainty, stalled projects, delayed investments in cleaner energy sources. Environmental assessments, if done wrong, don't just harm polluting industries. They can block funding for industries that are actually part of the solution. Instead of rigid mandates, we should encourage financial institutions to invest in genuinely sustainable projects through tax incentives and voluntary frameworks, not government force. Lastly, unreliable data. The biggest flaw in legally mandating environmental assessments is the simple question: how do you accurately measure environmental risk? Unlike financial risk, which is based on hard numbers, environmental impact is often subjective, inconsistent, and impossible to predict with certainty. We've already seen how this can backfire. Inaccurate environmental risk assessments have led to banks underestimating flood and wildfire risks, causing billions in unexpected losses. If the financial sector struggles to assess the existing risks, how can we expect them to accurately predict environmental impact decades into the future? So instead of forcing banks to make guesses that could turn out completely wrong, we should focus on developing standardized voluntary frameworks that allow for gradual improvements in the methodology without crippling the financial system with bad data and false precision. At its core, the debate isn't about whether environmental responsibility matters, because it does. It's about whether the specific policy is the right solution, and the answer is no. It would create a flood of useless paperwork, distort financial markets, relying on reliable data, failing to achieve real environmental change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have now heard the opening statements for both positions. We'll now start with the rebuttals, starting with the team in favor. University of Manitoba, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, am I audible and visible? Okay, so I will start my submission in 3, 2, 1. Thank you to my opponents for their arguments. And I would like to point out in response to their argument that it would lead to superficial overreach by pointing out that conducting an environmental impact assessment will provide banks and their stakeholders with critical input to assist with informed decision-making. The point here is access to information. This aligns with Principle 10 of the Rio Declaration, which provides that environmental issues are best handled with the participation of all concerned citizens at the relevant level, which requires access to information. Environmental impact assessments allow for greater access to information and consequently participation in the important issue of environmental sustainability. And these requirements provide uniform and standardized assessments will enhance trust and transparency, furthering the goals of sustainable development. Due to a desire to enhance reputation, the information gained through the assessments will incentivize banks and their stakeholders to steer towards more environmentally sustainable companies and divert financial support from environmentally destructive industries. And moreover, in terms of regulatory overreach, I would like to point out that as required in the Paris Agreement, climate change is a global emergency that goes beyond national borders. Therefore, international cooperation and coordinated solutions are required at all levels. Banks play a critical role in financing economic activities and benefit from their proceeds. So they must be held accountable for their decisions. Environmental impact assessments allow for greater transparency, which leads to greater accountability. Imposing laws that require banks to conduct environmental impact assessments will further the goals of sustainable development as required in the Rio Declaration and the Paris Agreement. The concept of sustainable development provides that development should be achieved in a way that equitably meets developmental and environmental needs of present and future generations. By financing economic activities, including activities that negatively impact the environment, banks play a key role and making them possible. So they should be held to the obligation.
Thank you. Thank you. Your time is up. We'll now hear the first rebuttal for the against position. Hague University of Applied Sciences, you now have 2 minutes.
Thank you for the floor, and also thank you to the proposing team for their submissions. While we do not disagree with the spirit of the legal instruments that were invoked, we would like to draw your attention to certain key issues in the reasonings presented by the proposing team. First of all, the definition provided for the concept of environmental assessment does include and is of course reliant on UN sources. However, it does include the idea that potential environmental impact should be evaluated. We draw your attention to the issue that we have mentioned prior in our submission of unreliable data. The Deep Horizon oil rig explosion in 2010 is a good example of what actual environmental assessment means. BP at the time argued that the effects of the explosion had not reached the Mexican coast. However, more than 10 years on, the fishing industry in the lagoon that was closest to the explosion has taken a massive blow, meaning that people in the lagoon cannot finance their families anymore. Which goes to say that any sort of environmental impact assessment is absolutely unreliable because we cannot predict the future. Moreover, environmental harm does not know borders, which means that the approach should be of instead regulating banks, which would, for lack of a better saying, kill the messenger, to regulate industries. We also draw your attention to the argument brought that regulation would foster transparency. We would like to extend the idea that, of course, transparency is important, but instead of artificially increasing and creating this illusion of transparency through excessive reporting, it is much better to regulate the industry. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear the second rebuttal, starting with the position in favor of University of Manitoba. You have 2 minutes.
Excellent. Can everybody hear me and see me? Wonderful. I'll begin in 3, 2, 1. First of all, thank you for the submissions of my opponent. You've made some excellent arguments. First, I'd like to address your argument regarding overreach. We've specifically addressed the concern of overreach in the definition that we set at the beginning of the debate. We clarified that the legislation should be introduced at a state level and that the the proposal does not necessitate rigid criteria. In fact, it allows for a flexible integration within the specific needs of the legislating country. So we don't believe that there's a concern of overreach at all. Additionally, regarding the matter of superficial compliance, this relies on the assumption that governments are unable to regulate their businesses within their countries. It's certainly the case that governments can and should introduce legislation and also enforcement schemes to go with them. It's not necessarily the case that compliance is going to be superficial at all. And thirdly, regarding your example of the oil rig explosion, this is in fact a prime example for why the motion must be passed. The regulations aren't even at all attempting to address the future, not trying to predict the future at all, but more so are trying to prevent similar issues from occurring by enforcing a more robust scheme, or in fact a scheme at all, of environmental assessment. This will include risk assessments related to, for example, tragic accidents, which this clearly was. In conclusion, many of the points that were brought by my opponent to counter our arguments are in fact not directly applicable, specifically the concerns of overreach, superficial compliance, and predicting the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now move the second rebuttal for the position is against starting Hague University of Applied Sciences. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. We would first like to address a very recent point made by the proposing team. Afterwards, we would like to go back to the points made in the first 2 speeches delivered by the proposing team. First of all, the reason why the opposing team brings the idea of regulatory overreach into the discussion is because without any form of rigid criteria or a clear means of enforcement, especially when it comes to transnational banks, which would then operate in nationally regulated frameworks, we do encounter the issue of greenwashing. We have no intention of boring you with the details of greenwashing, as we all know what it means and what it entails. However, its impacts are extremely dire, considering that it creates the illusion, coupled with the illusion of transparency that the proposing team is introducing. Greenwashing creates the illusion that companies are operating in a green framework rather than actually enforcing means of verifying and of creating a proper safeguard for the environment. To also address the idea of transnational banks, we raise the question of enforcement discrepancies, as the proposing team argues, these regulations would be introduced on a national level. We are all aware of the fact that most banks, especially the big ones who have the most impact, especially environmentally, do operate in multiple national spheres, which would include the issue of enforcement problems. To go back to the third argument of the proposing team, just to touch upon that, regulatory overreach would be an issue, especially because there is no industry that is net neutral. There is no industry that is carbon neutral in the true sense of the matter. And we raised the idea that lithium and cobalt mining is a very important resource to go further into renewable energies and to transition into a green economy. Thank you.
Thank you. This marks the proposals. We will now be hearing concluding statements by both teams. Starting with the team in favor, University of Manitoba, you have 2 minutes for your conclusion.
Hello, thank you for the time. I'll begin now. And I wanted to address some of the concerns brought up by my learned colleagues at The Hague. That, first of all, that there is no standardization. There is standardization that exists at the UN level in the form of the sustainable banking practices. And this is something that we can have nations that aren't signed on do sign on. And my colleagues mentioned the perfect example, transnational banks. Transnational banks don't want to be bothered doing different kinds of environmental assessments for different countries, especially if they're operating in different jurisdictions. They will be the greatest proponents for standardizing and to signing on to the UN sustainable banking principles. And they will be the greatest proponents in this. secondly, they mentioned that this compliance would be superficial and that the data would be not useful. And also in addition that environmental impact assessments are complex with respect to the mining that my colleagues mentioned. And simply because an assessment is complicated or difficult to measure the impacts on the environment is no reason not to do it at all. And forcing banks to do these assessments will lead to specialization and improved measurements. And these measurements can go into how we provide green bonds, how we provide tax incentives, like my colleagues mentioned, right? This information and this data will lead to better assessment and will create better information for us to use, as information lays the foundation for more advocacy with the stakeholders we mentioned. In summary, banks should be legally required to assess the environmental impact of their investment portfolios. And we defend that failing to implement these changes is harmful for the environment and will result in banks continuing to ignore environmental assessments and us not having the relevant information we need to advocate and to create a framework for change. This motion empowers stakeholders with information to make informed decisions. A standardized framework for environmental impact assessments exists in the form of the UN Principles for Responsible Banking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now be hearing concluding statements for the position against the Hague University of Applied Sciences. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I will start speaking in 3, 2, 1. Honorable judges, while the intent behind mandating environmental assessment is noble, the reality is far more complex. Today, we've shown that forcing banks into rigid one-size-fits-all assessment risks, creating more problems than it solves. Regulations that are poorly designed lead to superficial compliance, mere box ticking that breeds inefficiency and misleads investors with unreliable data. Further, we would also like to mention that forcing nations to sign on to UN principles literally negates the whole premise that the pro team started with, which is national regulation. Consider the challenges that our banks already face. Smaller institutions lacking the resources of industry giants, which are disproportionately burdened, potentially triggering market consolidation and stifling competition when regulatory overreach forces banks to choose between economic growth and political development. We risk slowing the transition that industries need for clean energy. Critical sectors like mining for lithium and cobalt are the backbone of renewable technology. They could be unfairly marginalized, ultimately delaying the shift to a sustainable future. Moreover, how can we accurately measure environmental risks when the metrics are as fluid and multifaceted as climate itself? With no universal standard, the data becomes inconsistent, fostering uncertainty rather than clarity. Instead of imposing heavy-handed mandates, we should nurture voluntary, standardized frameworks that encourage innovation and gradual improvement. In closing, while we share the commitment to a healthier planet, we must choose smart, effective policies over well-intentioned but blunt instruments that could disrupt our financial system. Let's pursue economic balance and environmental progress with stability, ensuring that our drive for sustainability does not inadvertently stifle the growth that we seek to protect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to congratulate both of us on your good faith matches. I will be passing the floor to my colleague to finish off and conclude our session.
Yes, so thank you very much and well done for this match to both teams. So now we'll collect your impression. So it means from now you are not under evaluation by the judge. So I will give the floor alternatively between the two teams, between the students. And I will start first with Mr. Tarun Sandhu. What did you think about the match?
The match was exciting. The topic was something that was really interesting and really engaging, especially with the transnational nature of banks and financial institutions, how they span the globe, but also the regulations that they face are mostly national. And getting to debate that topic with my learned friends at The Hague, it was an amazing experience to try and get their take on it. And especially because if we were on the con side, we would raise a lot of the points that they did. And so that was helpful to see that there was that kind of common understanding.
Thank you very much. Miss Kochokaru, what did you think about the match, the performance of both teams as well?
It was, I would say, quite entertaining. And I echo the experience essentially, and the observation made by our colleagues at Manitoba, the fact that there was overlap in the ideas that we had even before facing each other. And so we did prepare certain points that the team coming from Manitoba also addressed. So it was really interesting to see, first of all, indeed, the common understanding of the topic, but also the fact that similar ideas can be played and interpreted extremely differently depending on your perspective on things. So it was really dynamic and very interesting to participate, to be honest.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now, Mr. Colcornis, what do you think about the match? I think Mr. Cornis had to reconnect, I think.
Hello, does anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Yeah, first of all, I am terribly sorry. My laptop computer crashed, and it has never done that before, so it picked a perfect time. But to your question, first of all, it was super enjoyable, the debate. So much fun. I did most of the preparation or my primary preparation was in the event that we were the against side, so it was very fun. Like everyone's mentioned, I'm sure this is a popular theme, that it was fun to hear my opponents speak on a lot of points that I myself had prepared, and I'm jealous that they got to put them forth because I was looking forward to it. But yeah, it was incredible. It was incredible fun and wonderful to hear arguments that I had been thinking up in the back of my mind for a week now be articulated in a way wonderfully and also differently than I would have. So that was super fun and also. Yeah, a wonderful performance to you, my opponents. You guys did great.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Alexinchi, what do you think about the match?
Well, first of all, I share in Cole's sentiment because I was actually on the other side of the coin. I do usually believe that, we should balance regulatory oversight with the free market itself. But in this case, I was more personally on the pro side. And also it was very interesting to see also some different points to the point in which in the closing speech, I did have to make a bit of an adjustment because I just needed to say one more thing, which was very interesting. It was a bit, let's say, it was surprising, and I enjoyed that. I love the idea of hearing actually new ideas that you've never thought of that are perhaps new to you, and that's also why we love doing this tournament.
Thank you. And finally, Miss Nav9, what did you think about the match? Yeah, microphone.
You're muted.
Oh, hi. Hi. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the challenge, and I enjoyed preparing for the debate and the topic, learning more about it. And yeah, kudos to the other team for their great preparation and effort. That just made it more interesting and fun to participate in it. And I would also like to thank the organizers for giving us this opportunity to participate and develop our skills. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So yes, on behalf of the Quarks Foundation, I would like to thank you for this match, knowing that it is the second match for the University of Applied Science team, and it is the first match for the University of Manitoba. The reason is because there is a third university, this is the University of Melbourne, and this university asked to have their first match, which is normally against the University of Manitoba, after, let's say, the day 3 match, so after today, because they start their academic year in February, when the competition started. So they will finish their group phase early April, Melbourne time, on the 1st of April. So yes, this was a match for the Group B, and the two best teams of the Group B will meet the two best teams of the Group A in 8th of finals. We remind that in the Group A you have a Bulgarian university, a Zambian university, a Nepali university, and as well a British university, King's College London. So that will be the potential future opponents in 8th of finals. So now we'll be ending the session, because one team has some personal obligations, so we will be, of course, releasing the results of this match in a few days. We send greetings and we thank as well the judge for their time. We'll be watching and rewatching the match during the 2 next business days. So many thanks again. So congratulations again for the 2 teams, and of course we keep in touch for the rest of the competition. Have a great follow-up for this great, I would say, group phase. Many thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
great
you
day.
very much.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank
Take care.
you. Bye-bye.